Welcome, history enthusiasts, to yet another thrilling, epic journey through the ancient, forgotten past. For countless thousands of years, the world believed the glorious fall of Troy was just a beautiful fairy tale. We pictured a massive, giant wooden horse, bringing absolute doom to a truly majestic empire of bronze. But what if I finally told you that the legendary poet Homer was not entirely spinning absolute lies? Deep beneath the violently scorched earth of Turkey lies a tragic truth that will shatter everything you know right now. According to the ancient epic Iliad, it all began with a forbidden and dangerous romance. The young Prince Paris of Troy boldly stole the breathtaking Helen, the absolute most beautiful woman in the known world. This one single selfish act of passion sparked a truly devastating 10-year siege against the wealthy Trojan walls. The mighty Mycenaean Greeks launched a massive fleet of 1,000 ships to reclaim their stolen queen. Crimson essence deeply stained the coastal plains, as mighty heroes from both warring sides clashed in fierce, unforgiving bronze combat. Yet the towering, massive walls of Troy seemed completely impenetrable to any invading mortal army. Legend says the clever Odysseus devised the ultimate stroke of military deception. The cunning Greeks built a truly colossal wooden horse, hiding their deadliest warriors deep inside its dark, hollow belly. They pretended to sail away in defeat, leaving the magnificent wooden beast as a sacred offering. The victorious Trojans joyfully dragged the massive wooden trophy right through their previously unbreakable gates. Later, under the heavy, ominous silence of the night, the hidden soldiers slipped out and opened the grand city doors. A devastating conquest followed, wiping the glorious kingdom of Troy entirely off the global map. For countless generations, learned scholars dismissed this epic saga as nothing more than a mere childish fantasy. Academics of the 19th century believed this magnificent city never actually existed. They argued that gods, monsters, and magical horses had absolutely no place in serious history. To them, the blind poet Homer was simply a masterful storyteller, entertaining the ancient crowds. The mighty Iliad was firmly placed neatly on the fiction shelves, alongside fables and mythological legends. Classical historians refused to dig for physical proof, trusting their books over the hidden earth. It seemed the glorious legacy of Troy was forever buried in the dusty pages of poetry. Yet a few incredibly rebellious minds began to notice impossible details hidden within the verses. How could a purely fictional story map the real geography of Asia Minor with such precision? Every river, mountain, and coastal wind described by Homer perfectly matched the actual landscape. This undeniably brings us to a crucial question that challenges everything we thought we knew about the past. If you were a completely blind poet, could you perfectly invent a complex tactical map of a foreign land? The descriptions of naval routes and battle formations were simply too accurate to be pure fantasy. Someone out there must have truly witnessed these landscapes, passing the vivid memories down through oral traditions. The mighty Dardanelles Strait was a highly strategic waterway, directly connecting the Aegean to the Black Sea. Absolutely controlling this vital passage meant acquiring immense wealth through heavy taxes and rapid, bustling trade. It became increasingly clear that the epic poem might be a faded blueprint of a forgotten war. However, without physical artifacts, the academic world flatly refused to rewrite their history books. The scholars demanded solid stones and fractured bones, not just beautifully crafted verses of poetry. The great mystery of Troy remained strictly locked beneath the earth, waiting for someone crazy enough to start digging. That very person finally arrived in the late 19th century, fiercely armed with extreme wealth and profound obsession. Let us carefully examine the geography that Homer vividly painted in his ancient epic. Indeed, many modern scholars strongly argue that oral traditions can preserve truly critical data for centuries. The poems speak of the roaring Scamander River, a powerful torrent flooding the Trojan battlefield. Later, when curious geologists studied the Turkish coastline, they found an ancient riverbed matching this exact path. The poet Homer also detailed the harsh northern winds that relentlessly battered the high, ancient stone walls of the city. Today's experts strongly confirm that the Hisarlik hill experiences these identical fierce gales to this very day. But how could a seemingly simple fable contain such highly accurate environmental and climate records? Furthermore, the epic precisely describes the military bronze armor worn by the Mycenaean soldiers. He sang of the unique boar-tusk helmets, a strange design that seemed purely invented for dramatic effect. Smug academics loudly laughed at the crazy idea of soldiers wearing the carved teeth of wild pigs into brutal combat. Yet, many decades later, hidden graves in Greece yielded actual boar-tusk helmets, perfectly matching the ancient text. These striking revelations forced a few open-minded historians to reconsider their stubborn stance. Could the majestic Iliad truly be an actual historical document, completely wrapped up in enchanting myth? The debate raged fiercely in the university halls of London, Paris, and Berlin during the 19th century. The orthodox professors firmly maintained that Troy was merely a symbolic representation of human struggle. They stubbornly refused to fund any risky expeditions to the extremely desolate plains of the Ottoman Empire. But history is rarely uncovered by those who strictly follow the safe and established academic rules. It requires a dangerous spark of madness, a profound obsession that borders on sheer religious fanaticism. Enter Heinrich Schliemann, a brilliant and ruthlessly ambitious German businessman with a lifelong dream. Heinrich Schliemann was not a trained scholar. He was a self-made millionaire who worshipped the epic tales of Homer. Since childhood, he had been captivated by the vivid images of blazing walls and heroic chariot charges. While others saw a charming fairy tale, Schliemann saw a literal map leading directly to buried treasure. He boldly announced his outrageous plan to travel to Turkey and dig up the mythological city of Troy. The academic community mocked him relentlessly, calling him a fool, chasing impossible ghosts. They warned that he would only find barren dirt and publicly humiliate himself on the international stage. Would you risk your entire fortune and reputation to prove a mythological poem was completely true? Undeterred by the heavy criticism, Schliemann packed his bags, carrying the Iliad as his only guidebook. He arrived at the desolate hill of Hisarlik in 1870, armed with nothing but raw determination. Local Ottoman authorities viewed this energetic foreigner with deep suspicion and sheer confusion. He hired dozens of local laborers, handing them heavy shovels and pointing directly at the rocky soil. This marked the chaotic birth of modern archaeology, driven by passion rather than strict scientific method. With the brutal swing of a rusty pickaxe, the boundary between fiction and reality was about to shatter. The earth slowly began to open, revealing secrets that had been violently buried for over 3 millennia. Heinrich Schliemann's massive excavation trench cut through the hill like a devastating wound across the dry landscape. He was not a careful scientist. He blasted through the upper layers with dynamite in his desperate rush. But as the thick dust finally settled, the entire academic world was paralyzed by an absolute shock. He did not just find one ancient city. He uncovered 9 different cities, perfectly stacked upon each other. The mighty Troy was not a single mythical kingdom, but a deeply contested site, built and destroyed over centuries. Each broken layer represented a tragic era of violent conquest, fire, and temporary rebuilding. Schliemann dug too deep, mistakenly identifying an older layer as the glorious Troy of Homer. He soon discovered magnificent golden jewelry, hastily declaring it the priceless treasure of King Priam. Though he was wrong about the exact timeline, his chaotic actions proved that the legendary location was real. Decades later, modern scientists carefully examined the complex stratigraphy to correct his reckless errors. They ultimately identified the layer known as Troy VIIa, perfectly matching the exact time of the epic tale. This particular settlement was violently destroyed around the 12th century before the Common Era. It was not some magical collapse, but a brutal human tragedy, leaving massive, thick layers of burning ash. The excavation trenches revealed a chilling reality, completely devoid of any romantic poetry. The ancient skeletons of the brave fallen defenders were discovered, tragically crushed beneath the collapsed stone walls. Ancient skulls were shattered tragically by blunt force, and heavy rusted bronze arrows remained lodged deeply in the bones. Many extraordinarily large storage jars were found deeply sunk into the earth, suggesting they hoarded food for a long siege. The city streets were choked with the tragic debris of a desperate, terrified population fighting for their survival. This terrifying evidence undeniably proved that a massive, catastrophic war truly happened right here. Modern historians strongly believe this devastating conflict was never fought over a beautiful queen. The actual true cause of the epic Trojan War was much more practical and deeply rooted in global economics. Troy was essentially a massive fortress, aggressively controlling the wealthy maritime trade networks. The Mycenaean Greeks were expanding their power and desperately needed access to the Black Sea. To achieve economic dominance, they had to eliminate the wealthy Trojan monopoly by brutal force. It was simply a brutal struggle for territory and wealth, cleverly disguised as a beautiful, romantic love story. But what about the magnificent wooden horse that ultimately caused the devastating fall of the city? For many centuries, people blindly accepted the literal story of this giant mythological creature. Today, leading archaeologists present a much more realistic and deeply fascinating explanation. Many scholars argue the horse was actually a poetic metaphor for a catastrophic earthquake. Poseidon was the ancient Greek god of both the raging oceans and the violently shaking earthquakes. Interestingly, Poseidon's sacred animal in ancient mythology was none other than the powerful horse. Geological records clearly show the region suffered massive seismic activity during that exact era. An earthquake could have easily shattered the impenetrable Trojan walls, letting the Greek army inside. The surviving poets might have beautifully symbolized this natural disaster as Poseidon's wooden beast. Another highly compelling theory points to the actual military technology used during the Bronze Age. That legendary wooden horse might have simply been a highly massive siege engine, carefully covered in wet animal hides. These towering wooden structures were frequently utilized to violently smash through stone defenses. Calling a giant wooden ram a horse was a very common military nickname in many ancient armies. Over centuries of oral storytelling, the siege weapon transformed into a magical wooden statue. The terrifying reality of warfare was slowly replaced by the romantic illusion of clever trickery. Schliemann's chaotic discoveries truly changed our understanding of human civilization and history. He masterfully proved that myth and reality are frequently intertwined within the deep layers of the earth. The truly spectacular kingdom of Troy was not merely an illusion created by a blind Greek poet. It was a bustling, prosperous reality where thousands of real men actually fought and tragically perished. The deeply burnt stones of Hisarlik stand proudly as a silent testament to the devastating cost of ambition. Looking at the shattered bronze weapons, we see the universal tragedy of every historical war. The ancient heroes might be exaggerated, but the suffering they caused was absolutely genuine. Every myth carries a vital kernel of truth, waiting patiently for a curious mind to dig it out. We must always question the stories handed down to us and seek the solid evidence buried deeply beneath. While Heinrich Schliemann was heavily flawed, his passionate belief forced the modern world to respect ancient legends. True archaeology is not just finding gold. It is resurrecting the silenced voices of the ancient past. The dark ashes of Troy constantly remind us that great empires can completely vanish in a single tragic night. The legendary wooden horse is no longer a symbol of cunning, but a monument to brutal conflict. It perfectly represents the terrible engines of destruction we constantly invent to conquer our neighbors. History is written by the victors, but archaeology uncovers the reality of the defeated. The proud Trojans fought incredibly bravely to defend their beloved homes, unaware they would become an eternal myth. Their entirely shattered city walls remain a powerful warning about the consequences of imperial greed. What other incredible legends are currently sleeping beneath the dirt, waiting to be rediscovered? Perhaps the legendary city of Atlantis shares a remarkably similar and deeply fascinating truth. Science and poetry are not true enemies. Sometimes they simply speak different languages of the ultimate truth. Homer gave us the profound, emotional soul of the war, while Schliemann handed us the physical, broken bones. Together, they reconstructed one of the most significant and dramatic chapters of human existence. Even today, the wind still violently howls across the plains of Hisarlik, carrying the faded whispers of ancient kings. The magnificent story of Troy will forever continue to captivate our modern understanding. Finally, we leave the burning shores of antiquity entirely behind, armed with a new respect for historical myth. The underlying truth is often stranger, darker, and vastly more compelling than any beautiful fairy tale. The magnificent ruins of Troy definitively prove that human greed for power and wealth is the true author of history. Tell us, was the epic Trojan War a romantic tragedy or just a brutal trade conflict? Share your thoughts below. If you thoroughly enjoyed this fascinating ancient mystery, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. Welcome.